What is going on, everybody? Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Welcome to episode 19 of Let's Be Frank with your host, your friendly neighborhood bull, Frank Madison. We have a lot to get into. Obviously, the Eagles lose a heartbreaking game to the Commanders. Not only did they lose to the Commanders, but they also lose their starting quarterback. The Phillies made some moves this past weekend with Jesús Luzardo as well as Max Kepler. I have some thoughts on that. And I will get into what was a very disappointing weekend in college football, a very uneventful first round of the college football playoff. But like we always do, let's talk about the Eagles because there's a lot to get into here. It's a hard game to kind of contextualize because it's one of those things where you can simply say, we would have won that game if Jalen Hurts would have played. And if he didn't get hurt, we would have easily won that game fairly comfortably, given the way the game was going when he was in there and given what he can do, and how the defense was playing. But at the same time, even despite Jalen Hurts going out and having Kenny Pickett step in, this game should have been won. And that's the thing. It's hard for me to overlook. Like I can easily say, it's either going up against the Commanders. They won 10 straight. This was not bound to. I mean, they weren't going to go into the playoffs, with a 13-game winning streak. I mean, that's that would have been kind of impractical, just given the nature of the NFL and how it's any given Sunday. And you were without your starting quarterback, but there were plays to be made. And first and foremost, right off the bat, Smitty had a brutal drop. I thought Smitty had a good game. He had a clutch fourth down conversion, which extended the drive. And he catches that ball, that game's over. And this is twice now. Obviously, Saquon Barkley had a brutal drop against the Falcons, which ultimately cost the Eagles the game. And this drop ultimately cost the Eagles the game as well. And it sucks because I'm a big fan of Smitty. Smitty's a consummate professional. Smitty's a guy that, despite his size, plays beyond that and does whatever it takes to win and is not going to vocalize his frustration, regardless of a lack of catches, lack of production. He's a guy that I thought took a very team-friendly deal. Could have waited as the offseason progressed a bit, see what other guys made on the market. But he ultimately decided to sign fairly quickly, get a deal done. So the guy's a consummate team player. He's a consummate pro. It's unfortunate, that he dropped that pass because he's very short-handed. He's a very likable guy. He's a very, very talented player, but you got to finish. You got to finish. You can't rest on your laurels of what you've done previously in the game. You can have all the catches and all the yards and all the touchdowns you want, but you got to finish the game. You got to be, you got to be dialed in. You got to concentrate. That's just the nature of the beast when it comes to football. When I played, my dad would always tell me to finish. I was an offensive lineman. Obviously you got to finish the block through the whistle, and if you're a wide receiver, you got to catch the ball and finish the route and so forth. And it applies with every position. You got to finish the game as a kicker. You can't just rest on your laurels of what you did early on in the game. And that's something that Smitty would want back, right? It sucks, but it is what it is. And it's the second time now this year. That to me, I think, obviously the defense could have prevented that, that touchdown drive by Jaden Daniels, but at the same time, it's hard to overlook that drop ball because that would have been ball game, and you would have got out of there with not only a W but with the division title, despite all that, and that would have been a huge win. But obviously, that's not the case. That was not Devontae Smith's finest hour, but I firmly believe that he will have a bounce back game against the Cowboys. If you have him in fantasy, I think he's going to have a huge game. I think they're definitely going to try to get his confidence going. So look out for that. But yeah, that's something that he's going to want back because that would have been ball game. Other than that, I thought he had a good game. AJ, I thought was terrific despite The drop that he had in the game, as well. I thought he was tremendous. Marcus Lattimore could not cover him. He was holding on to him for dear life. He just could not contain AJ. Not many people can, and it showed. And Barkley had that big touchdown run, but when Kenny Pickett came in, and you don't have the threat of a dual threat quarterback who can run the RPO like Jalen Hurts does, they were able to load up the box and get after Barkley, and they were able to shut down the run a bit. So that's another reason why Jalen Hurts' absence was so key. It's not just what he can do throwing the ball, what he can do in terms of moving a change, but that element of being a decoy and a dual threat quarterback, you have to account for. And they didn't have to do that, so they were able to load up the box and sort of slow down Barkley a bit. Now, as far as Kenny Pickett is concerned, I thought he did some good things. I thought, overall was a mixed bag. I'm not going to crush him per se, coming into that situation when you're not expected to, and then having to get out there and in the freezing cold to lead the team to victory is not easy as a backup quarterback. I thought he did some nice things, but there were some times where he did miss some guys wide open. They would load up the box and blitz, and he sort of panicked a bit and kind of ran into sacks or kind of bailed in the pocket at times. But that's to be expected. But I thought ultimately at the end of the game, I thought he was really good. Obviously, he hit Devontae in a perfect spot to seal the deal, and that's on Devontae to catch the ball. So he's a backup quarterback. I'm not going to lose my mind on some of the mistakes he made throughout the game. I thought ultimately, though, I thought he played hard, and this game was there to be won, and they didn't win. So he did his job at the end, and it's on Smitty to catch that ball. And as far as the defense is concerned, I mean, you force 5 turnovers but give up 36 points, and yeah, that's. I mean, you want to talk about the ultimate mixed bag. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, I thought that they did some nice things throughout the game. I thought Zach Bond continues to play at a high level. I thought, Darius Slay, continues to play well. But penalties hurt this team, and it really hurt CJ Gardner-Johnson, who obviously was ejected from the game. And we can sit here and talk about how the Commanders player put his hands on him, and CJGJ was talking trash, and we can bring up the whole sticks and stones, maybe break my bones, saying, but when you really think about it and you look at it, I think it's very apparent the referees are going to penalize CJGJ for some of the comments he makes throughout the game. For whether it's fair or not, I mean, that's just what they're going to have to deal with going forward. CJGJ obviously likes to run his mouth, but it kind of bit him in the ass in this game. And whether you like it or not, I think that obviously these refs meet with other crew members and they talk about things to look for. And it looks like the NFL is cracking down on some of the shit that he's saying. Yeah, so that's something that they're going to have to monitor. Jalen Carter was penalized for a personal foul. And to me, I think that's on Sirianni. You had that big blow up last week. That should have been nipped in the bud immediately. You had everybody talking about what happened on the sidelines. I think that's something that you need to address, and be like, hey, listen, I like your intensity and this and that, but you got to do it within reason. And I think that they need to have that come to Jesus meeting with both Carter and Sidney Gardner-Johnson this week. That hey, like you can be emotional and this and that, but the refs are cracking down, and you need to be cognizant of that because they will throw flags, and they're not playing around. And God forbid this happens in the postseason. So it's something that they're going to have to monitor, and they're going to have to crack down on, whether we like it or not. It sucks, but this is the route that the officiating crews are going. they've had enough of CJGJ talking shit, and they're going to penalize him for it. And clearly, he must have said something crazy if he got hit and he get penalized, or the other guy didn't get penalized. So, um, yeah, it was a weird game for the defense overall. Obviously, his ejection hurt the secondary a bit. Kenyon Mitchell got beat on a beautiful dime by Jaden Daniels, excuse me, to Scary Terry. He gave him a little bit too much cushion, and with a guy like Scary Terry, McLaurin, you can't do that because he will get his. So that's a rookie mistake that he made that he should be able to clean up. But it was worth mentioning because he doesn't you never see him get beat. But this is one of the first times where you've seen that since like week one. So just something to clean up a bit. To me, I thought the worst player of the game was our punter, Braden Mann. I thought he was terrible. Washington was in great field position to start throughout the game. I don't know why they weren't kicking in the end zone. It doesn't make any sense. When you see them take the ball near the 30 a couple times, you would want to adjust, and the fact that they didn't is pretty alarming. I don't know why they decided to kick it short, but it really hurt this defense, and that's probably why they were able to score 36 points. I thought, and Braden Mann's been really productive all year long. He did not have a great game at all. I thought he was arguably the worst player on the field for the Eagles yesterday. Um, and special teams can hurt you if you don't execute. And I felt that he, by not kicking the ball into the end zone, really put Washington in a good spot for most of their drives, and it kind of hurt your defense. And yeah, I mean that's a crazy game like that's pretty hard to contextualize at times, but I feel like you know when you put the defense in a bad field position, throughout the entire game, you're asking a lot. And as good as this defense has been, and they showed up in this game, they forced 5 turnovers, and they were able to get to Jaden Daniels and fluster him. And I've noticed when he gets pressure, um, he doesn't. He has a hard time hitting his guys when you fluster him and you get him off rhythm. He has a hard time of getting the ball to the receivers, and they were able to do that throughout the game. But when you put your defense in a bad situation, and as far as field position, and when Jaden Daniels is a guy that can move around like he can, um, you know, it's what you get. And I felt like they did some good things, but you can't put your. I don't care how good your defense is. You put them in a short. You put the opposing offenses in short field. They're going to be able to do their thing, and that's what I felt like happened late in the game and throughout the game, and that's why the defense was such a mixed bag in my opinion. And then you also obviously, like I mentioned before, you had some boneheaded mistakes made by Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Carter, but ultimately I think when you deal with a short field like that, it's hard to overcome that, and that's what I feel like happened in this game. So as far as where do we go from here, we need Jalen Hurts healthy. I thought Kenny Pickett played valiantly, but clearly this offense runs through Jalen Hurts. He does so many different things, and it's very apparent that having to worry about Jalen Hurts as a runner opens things up for Barkley. I mean, Barkley's still good enough where he's going to get his. He still was able to get his even without Jalen Hurts on the field. But I feel like ultimately, when you have to deal with Jalen Hurts as a decoy, it opens things up. So we need to get him back, obviously, for the playoffs. I think that this Cowboys game is going to be a lot harder than people think. Yes, they're eliminated from the playoffs. Yes, they don't have Dak Prescott. Yes, it's been a huge disappointing year for them. They've been one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL, but they clearly rally behind Mike McCarthy. They had no business of winning that game last night. In theory, when you think about what was at stake or what lack thereof for them, and what was at stake for the Buccaneers. But their defense is playing hard, man, and that's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be an easy game by any stretch. Um, the Giants game, obviously, with the one seed, or excuse me, with the number one pick in play for them. Um, I think that should be a cakewalk, and that will ultimately seal the deal for the division. But obviously, with the loss and Detroit, Minnesota winning, the one seed's pretty much out. But I think that this Cowboys game, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they didn't win. But if you want the team to have some confidence going into the playoffs and have some momentum, it's not great to have to go into the playoffs with a 3-game losing streak. It's crazy how the NFL works. You could easily go from like the Eagles did. They go from a 10-game winning streak to a 3-game losing streak. So I do think it is important to have obviously Jalen Hurts healthy and a good showing against the Cowboys to not only win but to clinch the division. So yeah, I think that game is going to be a lot harder than people think. And again, it's not a game that they necessarily need to win because ultimately they have to. If they beat the Giants, they win the division, and obviously, and then Washington loses out, or they don't. I don't even think they need to lose out, honestly. But yeah. So it's good to have momentum going into the playoff at the very least. The playoffs, even if you're not going to get the one seed, and if you get the two. So, um, yeah. So that's pretty much it on the Eagles. Again, you could very well just say, oh well, we're without our starting quarterback, but it was a game that should have been won, and I think ultimately not having Jalen Hurts to spell open, to spell Barkley a bit in the run game, and then the horrible special teams by Braden Mann in terms of the kickoff game, I think it really hurt us, um, and put our defense in a really un uh, an unenviable situation, I should say. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the Eagles. Like I said, they have the Cowboys this week. Pretty feisty team right now, playing with a lot of pride despite being eliminated. Um, so that's a game, regardless of Jalen Hurts plays or not. This team needs to be ready because uh, they're looking to keep Mike McCarthy as head coach. I mean, that's the vibe I get because what you could say what you want about Mike McCarthy. Cowboys clearly like the players like playing for him, and they're looking to keep his job. So that is not a cakewalk. What is the spread of that game? Actually, let's look that up. Oh wow, there's still -7.5 for the Eagles. Yeah, I mean, if Jalen plays, I think. I mean, they have better players, right? I mean, and it's at home, and it's going to be in the cold. So I mean, yeah, but again, like I would not sleep on the Cowboys. I would not sleep on this team the way that they're playing. Uh, you can talk, we can talk all the smack we want about the Cowboys and their season being over, but they're playing hard. So, um, yeah, I mean, 7.5 points if Jalen plays. I guess that makes sense, but um, just something to think about. Just something to think about. Um, Next, let's talk about the Phillies. They made some signings. They signed Jesus, or they acquired Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins to be their fifth guy in their rotation. I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's a solid signing. I don't think starting pitching, regardless of who you have. I mean, you have four really really good guys. Obviously, with Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, and Sanchez. Um, I don't have a problem with it. I think it gives you flexibility throughout the year, and flexibility in the postseason. And when they move to a four-man rotation, curious to see how he fits. And if you need a guy that if God forbid something happens to our starting four guys, can come in the early innings of the postseason. Um, but I don't think that they necessarily, as bad as Walker has been as bad as he was last year. Um, I don't know necessarily if I would have traded to get him. Per se, I don't think it's a huge need. I mean, you could argue it's a need. I don't think it's the biggest need. Um, but I'm fine with it. It is what it is. It gives you flexibility. The Max Kepler signing, not the biggest fan of. Again, another guy who to me is a stopgap guy. I don't really think that he's gonna. If you look at his numbers, I mean, he started off his career, um, consistently hitting the ball for power. But I mean, he started off in like 2016 when he really played. He had 17 home runs in 2016, 19 in 2017, 20 in 2018, and 36 in 2019. So he was constantly getting better and better. And then after 2020, obviously he had the shortened season. He only had 9 home runs. And then he had 19, then 9, then 24, then 8. So he's kind of been up and down as far as power hitting is concerned. His average has gotten better over the last couple years. Um, he was a guy that, I mean, his lifetime average is 237, which is not great. Um, and he, prior to 2023, never had a season, or no, excuse me, he had one season prior to 2023 where he hit over 250. It's not great. And, he doesn't have great mobility either as far as fielding is concerned. It's like I said. I mean, they're ham and egging it, and I don't like that. You're better off bringing back Austin Hayes. I mean, seriously. And he's also a left-handed hitter, so you you don't have the latitude of having another right-handed bat. It is what it is. Again, like I said last week, last pod. Yeah, they don't have the money to go out and sign a guy like, Santander or Hernandez. Um, they don't, they have so much money tied into a bunch of guys. That's why I kept saying, you got to trade JT Realmuto. No sense paying him all that money. When you have guys like Marchand on the pipeline, you need more outfield help than you need catcher help. And yeah, this is just kind of the situation that they're in. Um, so, I don't know how much of an effect he's going to have on the team, but you know, his power numbers have been up and down the last couple of years, and I mean, at least he's hitting better. Like as far as average is concerned, he hit 260 in 2023 and 253 last year. So I mean that might be encouraging enough for people, but yeah, I think they need to do a better job in the outfield, and I don't know if this is going to be it, but it is what it is. Before I talk about college football, I want to let you guys know about Decals by Aaron. If you are a a Delco aficionado, excuse me, and you want to rock where you're from in Delco, you want all that good quality Delco gear, Decals by Aaron will be your hookup for that. You can go to facebook.com/decals by Aaron, or you can go to decalsbyaaron.com. If you're looking to rock the best Delco gear around, they are your place to go. So let's talk about the college football playoff, because I have a lot of things to say about this. That was very uneventful. That was very, very uneventful this weekend. They were all blowouts. There was no intrigue. And I think the college football playoff committee jumped the gun, immediately jumping into the 12-team playoff. I think they should have eventually got to a 12-team playoff, but they should have at least tried going to 6 to 8 teams. I mean, that SMU Penn State game was an absolute disgrace. That quarterback was a disgrace. Um, it just doesn't make any sense to let teams in like that. I mean, I'm all for allowing conference champions to get into the playoff, but in a smaller format. I mean, none of these games were interesting. Um, I mean, Penn State blew out SMU, Notre Dame was in control against Indiana. Ohio State took Tennessee to the woodshed. I got that wrong. Yeah, I know, but yeah, Tennessee did not show up, and Texas won comfortably against Clemson. And again, it's just I'm all for teams getting in, but a lot of these teams shouldn't have got in, and you can't put too much stock in conference champions of other conferences. And the thing I'm really worried about is because every conference champion gets a bye, and you saw these low level teams, these teams that aren't blue bloods like SMU, like Indiana, get handedly beaten. I wonder what Penn State will do to a team like Boise State. I wonder what Texas will do to a team like Arizona State. And if you have two teams with a bye get absolutely shellacked, I mean that's a really bad look, and it's a problem because I'm all for trying to correct what happened with Florida State the previous year, even though they would have got absolutely blown out by Michigan in the playoff. I understand that you want to give conferences an opportunity, but when you overcorrect what you did by not only giving them an opportunity, but giving some of these conference champions as buys, it's ridiculous. Like Texas should have got a buy, Penn State should have got a buy, along with Oregon and Georgia, and we would have had more competitive games. Like at the very least now, because you're not gonna obviously you're not gonna trim the playoff. Like if anything, they're gonna grow it. But if you had 6 or 8 teams, you would have at least dabbled with teams that were on the fringe and rewarded teams that were at the top and not just let everybody in. Like again, like you this is the gamut that you run of letting everybody in. Some teams are just not deserving. They're just not. And SMU was not deserving. Clemson was not deserving. Indiana turned out to be not deserving. Tennessee, again, like this, none of these games were close. And when you have the NFL on, it's like, oh, well, I'll just turn on the NFL game because none of these games are close. Like that Penn State game was unwatchable. That quarterback was absolutely atrocious. Um, and because Boise State plays absolutely nobody, it's hard not to imagine Penn State going and dominating them, and Texas as well. As far as going up against Arizona State, I just they jumped the gun going to 12 teams. They should have started out with 6 and then move their way to 8 and then move their way to 9. Excuse me, move their way to 12. Um, in increments, not just go to 12 and let everybody in and give every conference champion a bye, because I'm telling you this right now, and um I have no problem if you're a conference champion getting into the college football playoff, but and again, like none of this has happened. Like who knows? Boise State could shock Penn State, Arizona State could upset Texas. I don't think so. I think the cream always rises to the top, and there's a reason why the SEC and the Big Ten dominate. And unless Clemson is stacked or a Florida State team is stacked, um, you're not going to see an ACC team win, and you're not going to see a Big 12 team win. These conferences are chokes. These teams play nobody, and when they go up against somebody, relatively good like a Penn State, they get smashed, and it's not entertaining. There's no intrigue, and I think there's going to be some buyer's remorse of getting everybody into the playoff, seeing what happened this week, and if it continues, then it's like, what the F? What are we doing here? Letting everybody in. I think they're going to have to make some tweaks. You cannot make every conference champion get a bye, um, and you got to be careful of who you reward into the college football playoff, because you get results like you got this weekend. So, yeah, it was not a very entertaining college football weekend. I want to see great games. Like again, I have no problem with lower level teams getting in per se, but way too many ACC teams getting in, and it's a joke. It's like some of these conferences only need one representative. I mean, if Ole Miss was in it, if Alabama was in it, you're trying to tell me that they wouldn't have put up a better fight against Penn State. Michigan would have put up a better fight than SMU. That's how bad these conferences. Not every conference is the same. And people complain like, "Oh, there's an SEC bias and now a Big Ten bias," because they're the premium teams of college football. They're the premium teams of college football. I don't know what to tell you. Certain conferences are just not up to snuff, and they're not good. And you got what you got this weekend. Michigan would have put up a better fight than SMU did against Penn State on 1,000%. 1,000%. Tennessee obviously was a huge disappointment. I expected better, but Clemson was not that good. And of course, they got beat handedly by Alabama. Or excuse me, not Alabama. My apologies, by Texas. Of course, Indiana wasn't going to put much of a fight up against Notre Dame. They didn't play anybody. Who did they beat? It's a joke, man. It's and now we're stuck with this. We're not going to go back to 4, 6, or 8 teams, and it's going to be 12, and then we're going to have to make tweaks. Well, at the very least, you're going to have to make the best 4 teams of college football, regardless of conferences, get a bye. Okay, regardless. And if you got to have more, if the eye test, if you know that an SEC team is better than an ACC team, and the eye test shows you that, you got to let them in. Like, what are we doing here? Letting everybody in. Not everybody deserves to be in the college football playoff. Not everybody gets a trophy. It's a hard fact of life, but if you keep doing what we're doing, if they're going to keep doing what they're doing, we're going to get shit like this weekend. I mean, that was just not entertaining at all. It was incredibly disappointing. Um, so that's pretty much it for college football. That's pretty much it for the week. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody. I'm not sure if I will do another pod to close out the year. I might. Obviously, with the holidays coming up, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to do. But I definitely wanted to come on here and give you some thoughts on what happened this weekend. And if I don't see you, um, if I don't see you later this month, then I will see you in the New Year's and in the new year. And I want to wish you guys the